Job Costing Basics for Contractors by Michael Bohinc. This is an article review by Megan Carranza. What is job costing? Job costing involves a series of transactions that accumulate the cost of materials, labor, and overhead to a specific job. That costing is used to accumulate costs at a small unit level. For example, job costing is appropriate for delivering the costs of constructing a custom machine, designing a software program, constructing a building, or manufacturing a small batch of products, retrieved from www.accountingtools.com on August 8th. Job costing is also based off of materials, labor, and overhead costs. Job costing determines how much it takes to run a business and where these costs are going. Without the proper financial foundation, any pricing calculated from it will be shaky structure at best. We're not talking about the people pricing in this article review. Let's focus on proper job costing. Proper job costing includes all costs that are associated with the job. They include items such as materials, labor, permits, subcontractors, equipment rentals, and overhead costs that apply to the job. Job costing is literally breaking down each section of the department to get a better idea of where each is coming from and what funds are associated with it. If you are not job costing your work, how do you know if you're making any money or which jobs or types of jobs are making you money? Proper job costing includes all costs associated with the job. They include materials, labor, permits, subcontractors, equipment rentals, overhead costs applied to the job. So what's included in job costs? Let's start with materials. Materials include items such as sales tax, shipping, delivery charges, or other fees that has to do with the materials. This is when materials first enter the building or facility and the completion process. Once these are finalized and completed, this would then turn into goods sold. Continuing with job costing, materials. So, direct materials. The job costing system must be able to track the cost of materials that are used or scrapped during the course of the job. Thus, if a business is constructing a custom-made machine, the cost of the sheet metal used in construction must be accumulated and charged to the job. The system can compile this cost through manual tracking of materials on costing sheets, or the information can be charged by using online terminals in the warehouse and production area. Typically, materials are kited for a job in the warehouse and are charged to a specific job at that time. If any costs remainder materials are later returned to the warehouse, their cost is then subtracted from the job and they are returned to storage. So what's included in job costs with labor? This is essentially the cost of workers to complete the projects, and their benefits are included. I want to make it very clear that benefits are included with labor costs. Not only does this include the wages, but also insurance, unemployment benefits, paid time off, medical, dental, vision, all of the benefits you can imagine. So the direct labor cost includes all of these. So instead of $11 or $20 or what have you, this might actually be $39 to $40 an hour, including all of those benefits. So, if an hourly wage was $25 and then we add in the Social Security, the taxes, the Medicare, the total averages out to probably about $37 to $40 an hour versus the original $25 an hour quote. This means that not only the cost of hourly wages, but also we need to think about all the other items in the background, such as insurance benefits, unemployment, that the company pays for when considering any labor costs. So continuing with job costs and direct labor costs are most commonly associated with products in a job costing environment, where the production staff is expected to record the time they spent working on various jobs. and this is very ideal and very normal in most manufacturing positions. All right, so the last piece is what is included in job costs. Let's talk about overhead costs. There's several ways to allocate overhead costs. I mean, we could do a single source overhead allocation or even a dual source, as this author explains. The single source allocation is the overhead is distinguished using one aspect of the company, such as labor or materials. And the dual source allocation is based off of two aspects that are distinguished for the overhead. This tends to be more accurate allocation of the two choices. However, this requires the most up-to-date information for the company, and it might not be ideal for most contractors. The single allocation, most of these are sales, revenue, material costs, labor costs. For the purpose of actual job costing, this author suggests using labor hours versus anything else listed. It is not recommended recovering any of your overhead via your material costs because many times the customers are providing materials for you, the garbage disposer, water heater, etc. When that happens, you lose whatever overhead was allocated to that material. Now with the dual overhead allocation, the overhead is allocated based on two components of direct cost of the job, usually labor and the rest is direct costs, such as materials, labor, permits, etc. With using the dual source overhead allocation, the subcontractor needs to have precise financial documentation in order to keep track of this information. Within both of these, obviously there are some limitations. Under single source allocation, it is possible for the job to be overbid because of all of the overhead that was being recovered through labor. If a job is material intensive, you have underbid the job and lose money that way because of the low amount of overhead that will be received through the labor component, and no overhead is recovered through materials. Most cases, you want to start off with the single allocation. Once you understand that and complete that in its entirety, then you can start moving into the dual source overhead allocation. Again, job costing. We're talking about the charge to cost of goods sold. To charge the entire variance to the cost of the goods sold. This is the simplest method. We want to allocate the variance to the accounts for finished work, work in progress, and the cost of goods sold based on the ending balances in these amounts. This approach is slightly more time consuming, but is the most theoretically correct method under generally accepted accounting principles. Charge to jobs. Allocate the variance to those jobs that were open during the reporting period. This approach is the most time consuming, and it essentially reverts a company back to the actual costing system, since the results of this method will approximate those created under an actual cost allocation system. You can determine the overhead cost per labor hours by taking the total overhead cost for the company and dividing them by the labor hours worked. Then take the hourly amount calculated and multiply it by the hours worked in the job. That will give you the total overhead that should be allocated. Conclusion? I think this author says it best. Proper job costing is an important component of a contractor's financial foundation. Without it, your guesstimating or your best guesses or ballparking your job costs and pricing could mean that your business is circling down the drain. This author even gives us tools of success under www.contractormag.com to review job costing worksheets that are there to help you out.